So here's something interesting. If you've ever wondered whether you're part of South Africa's middle class, you're actually not alone. It's one of those questions that seems straightforward until you start digging into the numbers. And then you start to realize just how complicated the answer really is. The truth is that in South Africa, defining what it means to be middle class is like trying to hit a moving target and you're literally blindfolded. But here's the thing about South Africa's middle class. There's no official definition. None. Zero. Which actually means that everyone from economists to banks to research institutions have their own take on what those magic numbers should be. And actually, boy, do they vary widely. We're talking about estimates that range from as little as 4,300 Rand per month all the way to 30,000 Rand per month. That's not a range, that's just a huge chasm. It's a canyon. This massive spread isn't just academic nitpicking. It reflects the harsh reality of South Africa's economic landscape. When you have an unemployment rate that's hovering around 32 to 35%, depending on which quarter you're actually looking at, even earning 1,000 Rand a month puts you ahead of millions of people who have no formal income at all. Suddenly, the concept of middle becomes relative to a very skewed playing field or data set. The research on socioeconomic policy groups at Stellenbosch University puts it perfectly. The term middle class comes from developed countries where a significant chunk of its society consists of well-educated, skilled people who are earning decent salaries. But when you try to apply that very same concept to a highly unequal developing country like South Africa, things get messy pretty fast. Even with all that said, I still want us to break down what the various institutions are saying, because understanding these different perspectives around the middle class helps to explain why they're so confusing. Let's start with Stats SA. If we look at the formal sector, the average sits at around 27,000 Rand to 28,000 Rand per month as of 2024. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The median, the actual middle point, is only 5,400 Rand per month. The gap between the average and the median tells you everything you need to know about the income inequality that exists in South Africa. Then Discovery Bank. They also have a classification. Their spend trend report is pretty generous, defining the middle class income earners as those making between 8,300 Rand to 29,200 Rand per month. That's 100,000 Rand to 350,000 Rand annually. It actually lines up with what the South African Reserve Bank considers to be middle class. Then there's the University of Cape Town. They set the bar at around 22,000 Rand per month with an interesting qualifier. Middle class individuals are those who no longer qualify for direct government support but still earn less than 75,000 Rand. Then there's an 80-20 report. This research firm talks about 4.1 million adults earning typically between 8,000 Rand and 30,000 Rand per month, describing them as people with families, mortgages, and frequent shopping trips. Basically, the classic middle class lifestyle that we all recognize and see out there. Then there's the Bureau of Economic Research. They're more conservative, suggesting that households earning between 5,000 Rand and 20,000 Rand per month should constitute the middle class. Then there's the World Inequality Database. They go even lower, putting middle class South Africans at 4,300 Rand to 6,000 Rand per month using a median measure. But what do you consider to be middle class? Hit us up below and let's start to have a conversation and see what socially people think is the middle class. Given this wide range of definitions, it makes sense to think of South Africa's middle class as having distinct tiers within categories, each with very different financial realities. Let's start with the lower middle class. This is 5,000 Rand to about 10,000 Rand every single month. If you're earning in this range, you're technically middle class according to some definitions, but your spending power tells a different story. Let's honestly be real about this. At 5,000 Rand per month, you're looking at maybe 1,500 Rand to 2,000 Rand in rent if you're following the 30% rule. And then there are fewer than 25 rental properties in Gauteng at that price point. You're essentially priced out of most decent housing options. Then food becomes a massive expense at this level. Lower income households spend up to 50% of their income on groceries. So someone earning 5,000 Rand might have to spend 2,500 Rand just to eat. That doesn't leave much room for anything else: transport, clothing, healthcare, or any other kind of savings. Vehicle ownership, forget about that. It's not on the table. With the general recommendation that you spend no more than 25% of income on transport, that's around 1,250 Rand, barely enough for taxi fares and occasional Uber rides, let alone car payments or insurance and even petrol. People in this bracket are constantly making tough decisions. They're employed and technically better off than the unemployed millions, but they're living paycheck to paycheck with virtually no financial cushion. Then we look at the middle class. These are people that are said to be earning 10,000 Rand to 22,000 Rand per month. This is where things start to feel more recognizable or more middle classy. At 15,000 to 25,000 Rand, you can actually start thinking about renting a decent place, 4,500 Rand to 6,000 Rand for housing, eating reasonably enough, well without it consuming half of your income, and maybe even owning a car. The grocery situation improves significantly. Instead of spending 50% of your food, middle-class households typically spend around 34% of their income on groceries. At 20,000 Rand per month, that's about 6,800 Rand. It's still substantial, but it leaves room for other expenses and maybe some savings. Transport becomes more realistic at this level. 25% of 20,000 Rand is 5,000 Rand, which opens up a possibility for car financing, though you're still looking at entry-level cars or even used cars. This tier, the middle class, represents what people think of as the real middle class. Families with mortgages, kids in decent schools, annual holidays maybe, and the ability to weather minor financial setbacks without catastrophe if you are planning and saving for those. Now let's move to the upper middle class. This is 22,000 Rand to 30,000 Rand plus per month. Now you're looking and talking about people who can live comfortably by most standards. At 27,400 Rand, that's the current average formal wage sector, you can afford 8,200 Rand for housing, which gives you over 5,500 rental options in Gauteng. You start to have choices. Food costs become much more manageable. Higher income households spend around 11% of their salaries on groceries. Vehicle ownership becomes genuinely affordable at this level. 25% of 27,450 Rand is nearly 6,900 Rand per month, which opens up a much wider range of new car options. Business Tech calculated that there were 12 new cars that the average income earner could afford at this level. People in this bracket can think beyond just meeting immediate needs. They can save for retirement, invest in their children's education, take real holidays, and build some wealth over time. Look, when we look at all of this, there's a part of this whole discussion that makes this complex. Income alone doesn't tell the full story. There are other factors that determine your effective middle class status. Location matters hugely. The same salary goes much further in smaller towns than in major cities. 20,000 Rand in Johannesburg versus 20,000 Rand in Polokwane represents completely different standards of living. Household size is critical. A single person earning 15,000 Rand lives very differently from a family of 4 on that same income. Per capita income becomes the more meaningful measure of this. Assets and debt change everything also. Someone earning 18,000 Rand but living in a fully paid off house has more disposable income than someone earning 25,000 Rand with a hefty mortgage, bond, and even car payments. Educational background influences earning potential as well. The middle class, that's defined by education, skills, and professional occupations, represents only about 12% of the population, a very different group from those who are middle by income distribution alone. Perhaps the most telling indicator of South Africa's middle class struggles is how financial pressure affects everyone in this broad middle class category. Whether you're earning 8,000 Rand or 28,000 Rand, the past few years have been really tough to everybody. Interest rate hikes totaling 4.2% since 2021 have hammered everyone almost into debt. Electricity outages disrupt businesses and they add extra costs. Food inflation hits everyone, though obviously the impact varies by income levels. Even the upper middle class is feeling squeezed. This explains why financial experts consistently talk about the middle class in South Africa needing to change their spending behaviors. They need to limit credit card access, and generally they need to tighten their belts a little bit more. So what does it take to be middle class in South Africa? The honest answer is it depends on how you define it and what kind of life you want to live. If you're earning 5,000 to 8,000 Rand, you're technically middle class by some measures, but you're living a very constrained lifestyle. At 15 to 22,000 Rand per month, you start to experience what most people would recognize as middle class comforts. Above 25,000 Rand, you're genuinely comfortable by South African standards. But perhaps the most important insight in all of this is that being middle class in South Africa is less about hitting a specific income number and more about having enough financial breathing room to think beyond just surviving to the next paycheck. It's about being able to make choices where you live, what you eat, how you get around, rather than having those choices be made for you by your financial constraints and your circumstances. The wide range of definitions isn't just academic confusion. It reflects a reality in South Africa, one that is deeply unequal in our society, where the middle can mean very different things depending on your perspective. Whether you're in the lower, the middle, or the upper middle tier, the goal remains the same: building enough financial stability to weather life's storms and maybe just trying to get by. Thank you for watching this video up until this point. I hope it was interesting for you to watch just as much as it was for us to make for you. Check out one of these other videos and hopefully they'll be just as interesting as this one. Cheers.